Callum, thank you for coming, and it's so great to be interviewing you today. Our very first question is about your experience and about what you've seen change over the property industry. So together you have 70 years experience. It's substantial. You both are household names in the industry. What have been the biggest structural changes that you've seen in your career? So maybe Karl, I'll start with you.
Look, I think without question, from my point of view, the biggest change in property that I've seen over my career, given that I started in Box Hill in a little house, and there was not much happening in Box Hill in those days, but it's definitely inner city living, high density. And obviously that's something that Callum and I have both been very involved in. And personally, I lived in Melbourne Terrace and Republic Tower. I currently live in Eureka. And you just take that for granted now. But when we started, it was quite experimental. And, it found a niche though, and people really, really started to pick up on living in the city and all of the advantages. And they learnt what a great living option that is, safety, community, everything at your doorstep. And unlike what the naysayers say, you can actually get fresh air. I can't even think of a building that doesn't have openable windows. And there's all this rumor about open the window and all your furniture gets sucked out. What absolute rubbish. Mind you, we don't have balconies up quite that high because light plastic furniture might fly out, but of course we have fresh air.
That is, it is such a massive change. I remember the early 90s when people started building these amazing towers, and it was so radical. How about you, Callum? What's the biggest structural change that you've seen?
Oh, look, I remember when I graduated from architecture, and 40% of taxi drivers were architects. When I remember the Gilded Age when Victorians were all going to Queensland. I remember when we had a kind of diminishing population, and it wasn't great to be a Victorian back then. But I've got to say, I'm very proud Victorian these days, and I think all this started with the amazing work that our universities did in terms of promoting Melbourne as a kind of education city, internationally and domestically as well. And and I think they drove a lot of in a lot of ways the kind of repopulation of the central city. But for me, the biggest change has definitely been population growth, because what we've seen with population growth has been the incredible, embarrassment of kind of opportunities for the population at large, and the great ability to kind of recast the city in a kind of alternative vision of the city we want to live in. So, I love Melbourne. I love its kind of, its amazing Victorian 19th century structure. It kind of always have its bones like that. But with population growth, for me, Melbourne is a much more amazing place than without.
Karl, you have an institutional reputation throughout Melbourne's property market, and I'm sure with your architectural circles as well. Callum, you have a reputation of being more of a disruptor. But both of you have certainly formed Melbourne in your own ways and made it a much better livable, cool city to be part of. What would be the biggest changes both of you are advocating for in property? And I want to start with Callum, if that's okay.
Thank you for that question. Look, for me, I can't see architecture or any other industry without seeing it in the face of a climate emergency. For us, we have, so things became very real for us in terms of kind of climate response, and we have previously done a lot of advocating to our clients to kind of for buildings to be better, but not really heard, Now it's kind of so desperate, and the kind of challenge is so great that it's all hands on deck in the built environment. Not just new buildings, guys, like existing buildings need to be massively brought into line. Not just post-COVID-19 in terms of building safety and security, but in terms of, the commitment to renewable energy valve base and to proliferate a kind of industry of domestic renewable energy. That really is key, I think, for the built environment.
And Karl, what do you think?
Well, obviously, Callum and I are very aligned in this. It's it's what occupies us. Our duty to ourselves and community is to make cities a better place. And everything that Callum has just said is absolutely relevant and primary. We have to think about a sustainable future for our cities. We have to think about the buildings being providers rather than consumers, and we can do this. We have the technology to do this. And I think we have to think about architects as being mediums for that sort of constructive change. I think more and more the responsibilities on architects are becoming profound. And we have a duty of care, an obligation to make every project we work on, and like Callum said, to really work with our clients to get their attitudinal changes. I think that's happening. And maybe part of that story is also how we build. You know, think about modular systems for more sustainable and more quality, affordable housing, and think about what COVID has done to us. Think about COVID proofing the buildings and how they're to be used in the future. And also, I think we should put into this little basket, think about efficient, intelligent pathways through the permit process and understanding the costs to industry of waiting times, which have to be passed on to consumers. So I think there's not one change, it's a whole host of things. And again, in heated agreement with Callum, most of it revolves around the changing responsibility of architects to helping make sustainable cities.
Karl, we really want to talk to you a bit about apartments and how they've changed over your career. I mean, we know how good the opening windows are. That is a key, and fresh air is something that people love. So what have you seen as the biggest changes over your career, and where do you think apartment design is heading? What are some of the changes that you envision?
Yeah, okay. It's interesting. When we did our first apartment buildings in the 80s, Republic Tower, Melbourne Terrace, they were apartments really for people that were downsizing from suburbs. It was a limited market, and so they were quite large, quite special. We had to do that to get that initial magnetism working. And we went through phases. We saw a move towards tiny apartments that made them more affordable. They became investment apartments, and we're seeing all sorts of iterations of apartments these days. One of the things that has happened is people have now become far more used to apartment living, and they expect more. Their expectations of quality, facilities, typologies are very high. I would just say that the quality of living is really, really important, but it should be available to everybody. And that's something that we're coming to grips with. I think apartments should not just be offered to a privileged, as a privileged option, but it should be a fundamental unit of provision. We have to be able to make apartment living work for all people.
Do you think CBD living will continue to grow into 2021 when we get out of this lockdown and into recovery? And what is it really dependent on for its success?
I think we're beyond the days of saying, wow, CBD living, isn't that novel? Whoa, is it a threat? Is it an opportunity? What is it? Of course it will continue to grow. Every major city in the world is based on city living. Melbourne, not so long ago, was a dead city at night time. It was just a working commercial city. I've only lived in 2 houses in my life. One was my parent, 14 different apartments. It's been apartment living. I've been privileged and loved every minute of it. And am I any different to anyone else? I don't think so. I think it's just a fantastic way of living. People here now know that, and why wouldn't you want to live in the city, in the most livable city in the world? Of course it'll grow, it has to. It may not be for everybody, but again, let's make sure it's affordable for everybody and available for everybody. And I just finish by saying that the great thing about Melbourne is it's not just about apartment living in the city. Melbourne now has got so many different ways of living that is, a fundamental choices for people. Live in the country, live in the city, live in the burbs, whatever. And that's one of the great beauties of Melbourne. But CBD living is now an important, normal and integral part of life in this fabulous city, and it will keep going.
But look, I think a couple of things are going to happen when we work our way out of this pandemic, which is travel is going to go absolutely nuts. You know, I personally am never coming back home. But secondly, the city and the kind of, you know, the great attraction to community and culture and events and lifestyle that it has is just going to be, you know, so kind of, I'm missing it, like it's a kind of part of me which I don't have access to. So, you know, I say we're going to go a full on in terms of our commitment to our city and our enjoyment of it. I think, you know, that kind of shoulder period used to be like Karl says in the 80s, everyone went home at 5 o'clock. You know, city on the weekend was kind of ghost town. You know, these days, I think I'm going to continue to be, you know, maybe working sort of, you know, 4 days a week and, you know, but hopefully in the city. But I can see my hang around time in the city after work is going to get longer and longer as I kind of do all the things that I have been romanticizing about and really missing. But the city is not dead. The city will be back with a vengeance, bigger and better. And luckily, you know, we have this great opportunity to kind of recast that, not where we are at the moment, but well into the future with some kind of more progressive, more exciting models.
You spoke a little bit about the office sector, Callum, and I know that you are desperate to get back into the office and really keen to be back in the city. I mean, what are the major changes do you expect for office property going forward? And there's obviously a lot of landlords that are really concerned that there won't be as many people coming back into the office, and that does have huge implications for our CBD. So, you know, what do you think can be done to get people back into the office, and particularly from a design perspective?
Look, I think you've got to look at the population, right? So population at all different ages have very different needs now from office buildings. You know, actually younger people have more significant needs and older people have more significant needs. I don't know anyone that's going to be back in the office 5 days a week, 9 to 5 anymore. You know, we've all been forced to learn how to kind of work at home. And so I think what's going to happen is office buildings will need to have a kind of an expanded ground plane that involves kind of work clubs, you know, meeting rooms, boardrooms, kind of, you know, food and beverage assets, child mining, those kind of activities now need to be outside of the general circulation of the building. And guests to buildings will no longer come up to your floor, right? So all meetings in the future, I think, will be happening in a work club environment around level 1. There'll be intensive screening of people to be able to enter any form of commercial property. And you know, the office floors themselves, if you like, will all need extensive refurbishment to kind of provide for this clustering model, which I think we just have no choice. We have to go with now. But they will be very private floors, right? So the ground floor and level 1, I think, have this kind of, you know, real opportunity to become these kind of very fun, very entertaining places to be.
We've learnt a lot out of all of this. It'll make our office a more flexible place for people working, and we'll get some good things out of this.
Do you think these changes are going to last for 3 to 5 years, or is this a short-term solution to get us back to work?
No, I don't think it's short-term. I think it will change, but it will feel normal. And so we will work in different ways. It will be part of our consciousness, and we'll move on. We always do. We human beings adapt. And I think we've found out ways that we can work more efficiently and ways we can work that help people in very many different situations where perhaps working from home a certain amount of the time is a great thing.
If we could turn the conversation towards retail, I would love to get your views on the future of retail. Is there too much retail in Victoria, particularly in some of Melbourne's strips, where vacancy has been climbing pre-COVID? What will that look like in the future, and how would you repurpose some of these vacant shops in the strips and even in the CBD as well?
Yeah, look, I think retail in deep trouble, Zama. You know, you only have to walk through the city to see, you know, what happens to retail without the buildings being open, and a lot of businesses, unfortunately, you know, have fallen, right? Especially in Melbourne. I think people underestimate the degree to which this kind of 7-month lockdown will have on the population at large. Is no good. But you know, I'm not sure about the strip shopping centres, Zelman. I see in them kind of return to more club style facilities where, you know, people take spaces and work together, you know, in kind of more localized shopping environment. There'll be more commercial activities. I'm not sure that will help retail owners and the kind of rates that they've been used to getting in those streets though. But for the big shopping centres, we've been working on a kind of platform now for any retail kind of structure that hasn't been significantly refurbished in the last sort of 10, 15 years. They require massive change. Right? It must spread its kind of mind to more of a kind of 24-hour lifestyle and actually provide many more services and facilities than it has been forced to in the past.
For small shop owners who own a shop on Little Collins Street, Chapel Street, Toorak Road, or, you know, Church Street, Brighton, what could they do to make their shop more lettable and rely on that sustainable income for longer periods of time going into this recovery?
Yeah, it's a great question because obviously, and as Callum mentioned, a lot of the strip shopping, Chapel Street, Bridge Road, you can see a lot of emptiness on those streets, and I think there will be a move to boutique offices, some form or other, where the rents might suit them better, and that mixture of commercial office boutique style will then enhance the presence of the retail. So it's definitely about mixing it up, not just being a sterile small shopping environment, but really mixing up the uses. And I think people will really enjoy that. I mean, if you go overseas, what do? You don't go to the department stores or shop online. You go into the beautiful little precincts, and it becomes experiential. You know, the IT environments change the way people shop, and that convenience is profound, but the social pleasure of shopping and retailing's gone missing, and there's no doubt that retailers are working on that. They're working on ways of making retailing more than just going in and buying your socks.
On the hotel, you've touched a bit on hotels. So tell us a little bit what your views are in terms of the future of hotels and how they will change post what we're going through at the moment.
For me, that's why I kind of keep making the point. For me, our greatest asset as Victorians is our CBD and its culture and its life, right? And there is a great future for hotels in Melbourne that are more attractive and more appropriate for a domestic inbound tourism market and population, right? I also think as travellers, we're going to want a bit more space between other people. And you know, like when I grew up, the hotels were this kind of mythical kind of, you know, wonderful edifice where everything was just, you know, from the kind of front door all the way through this extraordinary kind of service environment. So for me, hotels will become the safest places in the city to be and to go. And so there will be a real reason, because of the way that they're maintained, the way that they're policed, the way that they're constructed. There will be a real reason for people to want to go there to work, to have meetings, not just to stay, right? So hotels will serve many different functions into the future, but their primary asset will be the investment in the safety and convenience for the population. You know, the kind of tourism industry in general is already going through this massive upheaval as they look at their existing assets. So for me, again, like what a great opportunity to kind of reset your hotel asset for the next kind of 20 years of its life. And the first people to do that now, while vacancy rates are low, will be the ones that end up with the better performing assets. And it will be a lot less expensive for them to do that.
Hotels will most likely be gearing up more for the working at home or the working in hotel syndrome. So the types of rooms might change to enhance the working environment. I mean, currently we've had a number of clients put a hold on hotels. And, but, you know, we don't advise our clients whether to go ahead or not to go ahead. They're huge commercial decisions, and we're certainly not prophets of future demand. But, and although we've got a number of clients who have delayed hotels at various stages. It's going to be buzzing when we come out of this. We'll get our interstate flights back. We'll get our international flights back. We'll get our tourism back. We'll get our business people traveling around again. And so with commerce and demand, they will come back in some kind of normal. But, you know, when they do, we'll have cleaner hands, and maybe the opening of hotel doors will be touchless. And but we can say definitely that there'll be a lot of hotel doors opening.
In Melbourne, we've all been in and out of ISO since March, and it certainly has evolved people. For each of you, what were the one thing about ISO that you're going to miss the most when we get out of this permanently?
Oh, look, there are so many things that I'll miss about isolation. I'll really miss the daily contagion statistics. I'll miss the relentless groundhog quality of each day, the inability to do what we like when we like, the inability to go to our favourite restaurant, the stories of people going broke, the inability of visiting my 93-year-old mother who lives in aged care, and the insidious undercurrent of mental health problems. But other than that, there's nothing I'll really miss from isolation.
I have really struggled in isolation. Right? I'm a very social person, and I have really missed people. But you know, being at home has given me the great opportunity to have a much more intact relationship, you know, with my family. And I see that, you know, while I was busy going to work every day for long periods of time, that there was a lot of neglect going on. So, you know, for me, I'm hoping that I can come out of this whole isolation thing a better man, and enjoy a more intact relationship, you know, with my kids, my family.
But the thing is, Callum, as well, is that as we do come out of COVID and we do work differently and there is more flexibility, you're now going to be able to have, as a norm, that kind of family interaction on your own terms. So that's a good thing. We've reevaluated our values. We've reevaluated the way we live and what we hold sacred. And I think that that's probably a positive. But other than that, it's all shit.
Nerida, what would you miss the most about this whole ISO? It's a bit different.
Yeah, I'm in Sydney, so yeah, we're starting to get out of it. I mean, I'm with Callum. You know, spending so much time with my kids has been awesome. Not traveling has been amazing, but then also I agree with Karl. Like just not seeing people and not, you know, that interaction day to day in the office. I think that's something that will be fabulous when that gets back to normal. How about you, Callum?
I have a newfound relationship with all my kids and my wife that I, you know, took for granted and didn't appreciate until now. So that is one very positive thing. And I know it's easy to say now and I can't leave my house, but I hope that I do get to come home for dinner more often, because it's something I never, ever, ever did. And it's this little treasure that's waiting there every day. And I always found something more important to do. But hopefully at the end of this, I'll realign my priorities and work around them, because it certainly changed my family life for the positive, 100%.
On to food. This is a new question that we've put in. Food that you've had too much of in 2020. Mine is cheese shapes. I've gotten sick of them now, so I am pleased that I've kicked that habit. But how about you, Callum? What food have you been eating too much of this year?
Yeah, the particular food I've been eating too much of is called food. It's all too available. And this watch here tells me to stand up every hour. So I stand up, and where do I go? Magnetic attraction to the refrigerator. I'm really looking forward for us to be able to go to a restaurant again, for me to do my business over, you know, at lunch or a dinner. I mean, these are part of the joys of doing business, and that's not happening. But when it does, again, it'll be enjoyable and it'll take a bit of pressure off Sarah.
My eating habits likewise have tended towards that of being a professional eater. I have found myself becoming a little bit more strategic. So I've been indulging in chocolate. Actually, more specifically, I've been craving travel and consumption so much. I've been rereading Nietzsche. And this little cafe he used to go to have every morning is kind of layered chocolate and coffee and milk. Right, so I like to save that for about 2 o'clock because my kind of energy levels are running really low. But after that, it's like starting a whole new day.
For me, it's been really simple. It's my son and I, we share this passion for ice cream. So Ben and Jerry's cooking cream, the cooking cream, with the cookie dough. So we'll take every time we pass the freezer, or 7-Eleven or Kohl's, we manage to pick one up. And we're pretty serious about it. We just throw the lid off and put the lid in the bin right away. There's no use to get our hands on it. That sucker's gone. There's no point of survival.
Zelman, I've been making Rosh Hashanah pavlovas. You know, experimenting with the pavlova with new season fruits. I've got to say, this is a kind of whole regional delicacy that we're having here.
The ice cream comment triggered something in my mind. Our Fender Katsalides chairman, Benny Aroni, lives a couple of floors up, so it's often up and down, up and down, up and down. But his wife, Roz, makes ice cream, and she's starting a commercial business. And so the sampling of that ice cream has just been fantastic. She makes great ice cream, and I'm always up there having a bite of ice cream. I do dearly love that.
Best TV series anyone's watched over the ISO break?
Oh, for me, definitely Fauda, Mark II. It's been extraordinary. Actually, Israeli TV has been a real kind of been a real thing for us in our household, as we've got a lot more focused and specific in the things that we're watching.
You actually look
in
a
fact,
little
the
bit
first
like.
place, as soon as
You actually look like Doron.
Doron. So as soon as they'll let us out, we're on our way to see our mates in Israel.
Tell you the truth, I don't watch too much TV, but Netflix I really enjoy Netflix because you can just tune into whatever's taking your fancy at the time. And I did see actually a really fantastic doco recently called My Octopus Teacher. And if you haven't seen it, and you really want to reset your values about animals you take for granted, watch that. It is unbelievable. And I think that if you've seen it, you'll stop eating octopus.
I don't think anything's going to stop that.
Have a look at this movie. It's very, very special.
My Greek friends will come at you with battle axes, guys.
Karl, what's your big idea what do you see as the biggest opportunity over the next 12 months?
If you want to be specific, we've really been doing a lot of build to rent as a typology because it suits a need. It's an apartment typology that takes this stress of market sales away from developers, and in difficult times with market, they've all started investigating it and they're finding ways through it. So I think that that's going to be a significant and much needed type of work. Specifically, we recently won an amazing, significant architectural competition in Central Place in Sydney, and that was in collaboration with SOM out of Chicago. And it's for us, that means, it's so significant that it really means that we've got a strong foot now into the Sydney marketplace, and it's going to be one that really does change the profile of our Sydney office. But I think that these sort of opportunities bring responsibilities, and we've learned through COVID, to overnight house the homeless. And maybe we need to enact that opportunity now as a matter of course, not as a result of a pandemic. A few years ago, I was in Chicago and talking to the equivalent of it was Chicago's Department of Buildings fellow in charge, and a very innovative, great thinker. But he had a simple idea. If you come to me with a building permit and it's for high-level sustainability architecture, your permit application goes to the top of the pile.
For me, the great opportunity in the next 12 months is, personal reinvention, and for myself and my practice to become kind of more inclusive and more comprehensive. That's been a real focus for us for the last sort of 5 months, while we've kind of, you know, had a lot of time to think and to talk about ourselves. I see this mirrored actually in the built environment. You see kind of a great undervaluing of the constructed environment that has happened, kind of like a real tendency to see them as kind of financial instruments, rather than to look at the great kind of opportunity in the fabric of the building and the city at large around them. A lot of work to be done there on ourselves and on the city at large.
Our practice really was Nonda Katsoulides and myself for many years. And we've gone through restructuring. And so all the people that have been there a long time are now owners and directors. And we've gone through great structural change in the last 3 years. We've been really, really fortunate to have just amazing clients and a continuous stream of them. And I think that one of our biggest opportunities, just speaking about our practice, is taking all of those unbelievable disparate talents of our senior leadership team and melding them into a platform for the future that will be sustainable, creative, fair, and we're looking at all of those issues with the office, more so now than we ever have in the past as we were growing. Growing was surviving, and now we're in this beautiful state where we can create a practice going forward in the future that is just the place that everyone will want to be, maybe even as much as they want to be in Callum's office.
Or perhaps more so, Karl. We look forward to
On behalf of Narrative and I, we just want to say thank you very much, both of you, for taking time and effort to come on to Lead the Way and talk to us what to expect in the future, because the two of you are designing and providing the ideas to developers on how to build for the future. And it's fascinating to hear what's going through your thought process when it comes to all sorts of asset classes that need to make decisions now on what will look like in 2 to 3 to 5 years. So thank you again. We look forward to seeing both of you in restaurants, cafes, in the CBD, in your offices, and not on a computer screen. But really do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. And when we're in those cafes, we'll be waving our hands. Yay!
Thanks, Darren. And thank you, Karl. Thanks for everything.
Callum,
Yeah,
see you.
guys.
All the best.